you preach. So in these times right now, when we're on lockdown with Corona, this is when we need to make adjustments to our goals. We need to make adjustments to our process. We need to even make adjustments to the way that we think about things, because times are different. So what I do during this Corona time on lockdown and quarantine, I go for small wins, because what I know with athletes are the same with me. I was an athlete. I'm an old guy now. But athletes crave wins. Wins create oxytocin and neurochemistry and dopamine and all those good stuff. And when athletes have a good at-bat, or they pitch a good game, or they have a good day, they feel good in their brain. So when you don't have the ability to get those right now, you need to find ways to get small wins every day. And for me at the beginning of this quarantine, I was just looking for one win a day. It might be reading an article. It might be doing some yard work. It might be doing a workout myself. It might be connecting with 3 players. The idea would be is I keep my goals small, and then I attack them and I achieve them. And I am in the moment. My mind is where my feet are. So I'm not at the office. I'm not at spring training. I'm not at one of our affiliates with the White Sox right now. And I can't be upset about that. I am here in my house, and I can only do what I can do. So that's how I practice what I teach all the time. Man, it's really helpful.
How do you, oh man, it was on the tip of my tongue. I got it. How do you change the way that you think? Because I've seen one of the, and this kind of goes back to a sales thing. So one of the things from a baseball coach perspective that I think some of the best training as a hitter that you can read is sales training. And the reason for that is because it goes into a lot of the stuff that you're talking about. Like, you're going to get told no, you're going to fail a ton. Like, sales is a game of failure, just like baseball is. And, so one of the posters I saw, one of the things I've seen on like sales training side is like, be careful what you think, because they become your words. Be careful of your words, because that becomes your actions. How do you change the way you think? And how often do you catch yourself thinking the wrong things that you don't want to, even though you're a professional?
Perfect. So I wear this. This is Visual Cue. It's my bracelet that I developed for my power program. It's got a little plus on it. It's my visual cue to remind me to go for wins, to change the way that I think, to believe in myself. The reality is that psychology, I'm also a professor in the doctoral program. I teach people to be sports psychologists, so I can get all nerded out, but I won't. But cognitive psychology is based on the way that you think, or I think, affects the way we perform and how other people see us. So if I go into this interview today to talk to you all thinking I don't know who I'm talking to, I don't know what I'm going to talk about, and this is going to be really awkward, uncomfortable because it's on video, I'm probably not going to give a good performance, because my thoughts affect how I perform. So I created what I call the reset technique, and I'll give it to you guys here. You might want to write it down. You can hit me up with an email later. I give it to all my athletes. It's super quick. There's 2 sides to this. This is the technique that's going to be away from the yard. And the other technique that I teach personally is how to do it quicker when you're going in for an at-bat or you're on deck, whatever. So the first catch is, 1, you have to become mindful of what it is that you're thinking. And in that, what Ryan's talking about, a negative thought. Negative thoughts do not help any of us. You don't always have to be positive, neutral or good, negative or bad. So if you're walking up and there's a runner on first base and you're like, oh man, I hope I don't roll over and ground into a double play, that is a negative thought. If you're at home in your bed and you're unhappy with the fact that you're slumping in and went 0 for 7 and you haven't gotten a hit in a while, you're getting negative. You catch that negative thought. You don't run from it. You don't cry from it. You don't get worried about it. You're like, hey, that's what I'm talking about. I'm thinking that negative thought. Step 2 now. We change from a thought to a vision. I want you all, and if anyone wants to give me feedback, you can. I want you to imagine a stop sign. What is the shape of a stop sign?
It's an octagon.
That's right. What is the color of this octagon?
It's red.
That's right. What is this red octagon trimmed in? What color?
White.
That is correct. This red octagon trimmed in white has letters on it. What are the letters?
STOP.
Uppercase or lowercase?
Uppercase.
Great. So everyone in your mind's eye right now, I want you to imagine that you are putting a stop sign on the wall in front of you. You're seeing a giant red octagon trimmed in white that says STOP on it. And what is it telling you to do?
Put your right foot on the brake.
But in this case, it's telling you to stop. And that may be what your coaches tell you, what your parents tell you. But that's why my technique has 3 more steps to it. It's hard just to stop. So first we become mindful with a thought, then we trick our mind and go to a vision. We see it, we're going to different sensory, and now we're going to 3. We're taking control and we're going to breathe. For me, breathing is crucial to get us to this reset. I am 175, 6'1", so I'm a, I don't know, small, tall guy, but I do 4 seconds inhale slow, 1 second hold, 5 seconds exhale. Depending on how big or small you are, some guys that are huge will do like a 6 inhale, 3 hold, 8 exhale, and smaller people maybe a 3 inhale, a 1 hold, and a 4 out. But watch me. So I'm going to take a breath in through my nose, smooth for 4 seconds, then I'm going to hold it, and then I'm going to exhale out like I'm blowing through a straw for 5 seconds. So the whole key is this breath. So check this out. So I'm going to take a deep breath in, hold it, so if you practice that breathing, we can get to that later, that's your technique to lower your physiology, to calm your body down. That's step 3. Step 4 of the reset now. You take your hand and you literally hit your thigh like you're resetting your mind. Same thing. What happens when my phone jams up? What do we need to do?
Reset it. Yeah.
We got to reset. So we hit the power. So literally, we're going to hit our leg, and it's kind of like a wake up, wake up. Here we go. We're going to take control of our brain, and we're going to reset. And step 5 is we're going to reset to a realistic thought or a positive mantra. And mine is always the same. I got this, and I'm going to kill it. I'm not going to dunk a basketball. I'm not going to be able to throw a 95-mile-an-hour fastball. But as a psychologist and giving a presentation and talking with people, I got this. So for you, if you go in as an athlete and you're thinking in your bed, laying up at night with these negative thoughts about doubt, whether who knows if I'm going to get making the varsity team, who knows if I'm going to get drafted, who knows if I'm going to get to high A, who knows if I'm going to be a big leaguer, and you start to get nervous, that nervousness does nothing for you. So you need to be aware of it, be mindful. Like I have this technique right there, I have a bracelet. Okay, I'm thinking negative. I catch it. I see a stop sign. I take a breath. I hit the reset, and I think, okay, I got a good swing. I'm working hard. I'm getting good help. I play great baseball. And then when you switch that out, you're able to lower anxiety and chill it out a little bit more. But that is a simple technique that you might want to play around with for everybody in the room. To try it out, be happy to give you more information on it. But that technique is only as good as you remembering to do it. So what we know about psychology is I can tool you up with the best stuff, but if you don't have a visual cue to remind yourself, so a lot of my hitters before they're at bat, when they're walking up, they'll put something on their at bat that's their visual cue, and it'll remind them, okay, hey, I need to take my deep breath, I need to reset, and I'm going to say, I'm going to swing fastball middle away. That's it. I'm not going to chase anything inside until 2 strikes. I'm not going to swing at anything spinning. You know, before 2 strikes, my approach is I'm going to swing at a fastball middle. That's it. And then what you do is you have a mental approach to your at bat, which you have control over. And when you're laying in bed and you reset and you get negative, instead of worrying all night, why not reset and say, hey, you know, I'm a good athlete. I'm going to make it. It's going to work out. I'm coachable.
That's awesome. Yeah. Let's get into the topic for today. I have another question that maybe come up at the end. By the way, guys, you know, kind of the rules. We try to keep this as less background noise as possible, but today's kind of designed to be a question and answer. So I've got some specific questions that I want to ask that I'm going to kind of guide the conversation. But if you guys have questions that pop up, I think this is one of the coolest speakers we have over the next, over the 15 sessions that we're doing. So make sure that you guys either A, put them in the chat, or B, unmute yourself and say like, hey, I got a question, or if there's a lull, obviously insert yourself and ask the question. I'll kind of start with kind of my vision or idea for today's topic, which is emotional intelligence and, emotional awareness in that. So you kind of defined emotional intelligence to me, on the phone. So if you could kind of have maybe a 1 minute long or minute and a half long kind of definition, maybe less if you can, on emotional intelligence, and then also your definition on emotional awareness. So like, what are we talking about today?
Perfect. So emotional intelligence came out of intelligence. So everyone in school would get an IQ test and they'd say you're smart or you're dumb or in between. And a lot of people did research on that and said, hey, there's other ways to assess how people are smart, street smarts. Anyone ever heard street smarts before? So that's what we coined as emotional intelligence. It's people who can navigate complex situations, complex organizations, different ecosystems in pro sports and have people like you. Have people not want to get you the heck away from me. To get people to realize that you have skills that you can control yourself, so you show them your best, purposeful best, and not your worst trait. So if you wear people out and you talk all the time, if you have high EQ, and hey, I can talk with the best of them, I can wear people out. But in pro baseball, calm it down, Rob, because this isn't the place to do that. That's EQ, being able to navigate in situations so that you can present yourself in a positive manner that's appropriate to the situation. Emotional awareness, and that is different. It is you being able to be aware or mindful of how other people are perceiving you. So if you're a youth baseball player on a travel team and you are not getting along with your coach, you need to have some awareness that you're not getting along with your coach and use some EQ or some emotional intelligence or some insight to try to make amends or to click with that coach. People in upper management, I don't know what level everyone is in here. I work in a lot of different pro industries. You have to be able to get along with people as you go. And in baseball, we call that being coachable. So coachable guys usually have high EQ, meaning that they don't show all their cards of who they truly are all the time. Everyone, they're showing purposely what's appropriate to help them navigate the system as they can. Good?
That's perfect. And that leads right into our very first presentation, which were traits of coachable players and things like that. So being able to be respectful, but also understanding like what you do and what you're good at the same time without being over coachable on that sense of things. So that was awesome. So to kind of go on that, part of the first question I asked you, or it might've been the second one, how do you talk about a reset a lot. I think humans, whether it's as a husband, as a father, as a baseball player, as a salesperson, as a factory worker, whatever we're doing, we get to a spot sometimes where we're so agitated and we're so angry, like we want to stay mad. We don't want to reset. Like we physically like have this emotion to where like I'm so mad, I would rather break my helmet and like break another one than reset right now. How would you kind of navigate that? How do you navigate that in your own life? And how do you help athletes who are helmet breakers and bat breakers and Gatorade cooler destroyers kind of navigate that? Because it's really easy for us to be like, hey, that doesn't help you. That's not helping your cause. But in some cases, do you think getting that out and finding like, do they just need a different outlet to let that anger out and like reset from there? How do you manage that?
Yeah. Before I answer that, I've seen throughout my years multiple high-level athletes being paid millions of dollars hurt their team and their chances for winning from punching fans, not a participant fan, literally a fan in a dugout, having a bat, throwing it, or a helmet come back and hitting them in their face. And every time you do that, you're hurting not only yourself, but your team. And if you want to have a career in this industry or in any industry one day, you need to take on qualities that lend you to become a professional. And a professional is just like me as a doctor or a professor, and a professional is also an athlete where you have to act according to the demands of the sport and the business. So for me, I don't let my emotions get out of control because I have over 25 years of practicing and being self-aware of how I'm feeling. And part of what sports psychology is, and psychology is teaching younger people or teaching big leaguers who've never had this before how to understand what they're emotionally feeling and then how to deal with it. For many in this sport, the athletes are all men. The idea is that men are raised to think that we're not supposed to be sad. We're not supposed to be scared. We're not supposed to do anything. If we show any emotion, it's always got to be aggression and anger. So the idea is what I do when I work with clients is get them to realize that the anger is a direct result of punching out. It's a direct result of making an error in the field. It's a direct result of getting a bad grade in the class. So instead of reacting to what the error is and being embarrassed or upset, it's how can I get my mind right to reset like I talk about so that then I can actually attack this to be better next time, because failure is never fatal. Failure is an opportunity to assess what's gone wrong and then to appropriately deal. So when you punch something, smash a bat, What does that do? And what do you think scouts think when they see a youth athlete doing that? That's out of control anger, and that we need to learn techniques to get that in check. And Ryan, unfortunately, that's too hard to give out a technique for everyone, but it's about impulse control, and it's about being a professional when you're going around and doing what you're doing.
What about so one of the things you talked about is like fair doesn't always mean equal. Um, and part of that is whether it's playing time, whether it's somebody that works, 50 hours a week on their task and is average versus somebody who works 2 hours on their a week on their task and is really, really great.
Mhm.
How do you help players manage like that phrase? Fair doesn't always mean equal. And is that something
Yeah.
you personally believe in?
Yeah, and again, not to get too much of a psychologist, there's a theory called reality therapy, and that's what I do most with all of my athletes. It's easier to do it with the higher level athletes, they get it, or the older athletes. It's a little bit more difficult to do it with youth athletes, 13 and under. But reality therapy says, what's the reality of what's happening here? Okay, say I am not getting opportunity to play on my travel team. Say I am drafted in the 25th round. Okay, that's the reality. So now what do you need to do to get playing time or get opportunity or to put time in and work in? If we're constantly comparing ourselves to the first round draft pick and what he's getting, or we're paying attention to how little work this one guy does that's ahead of you on the team and he's playing over you, but yet you're working more hours, that comparison does not except for anxiety and anger and emotional uneasiness. So the idea is we focus back in on ourselves and do a reality check. Why is it that I'm not getting an opportunity right now? Is it because really the coach just doesn't like me? Or is it really the fact that you have some sort of weakness that needs to be developed and needs time to be put in? And in some cases, if maybe you're not getting an opportunity because someone is deemed better, that's good to understand that and then find a way and find people to help you work to get better. But when we compare ourselves to everybody all the time, we're going to drive ourselves to have many problems with anger and anxiety. And that's no confidence. Confidence comes from knowing I put the time in with my coaches. I was in the cage. I was watching film. I was lifting weights. I was eating right. I was sleeping well. I had a solid approach. I kept my mind at ease. I was resetting. And when you do all of those things, you're going to get what's called peak performance. And that's what my specialty is with athletes all over the world, is how do I get athletes to peak perform? That means peak perform as often as they can. And those athletes do it because they have the confidence and they trust the process and the work that they've done, and they focus on themselves and not the other people around them. They're not on Instagram looking at who's getting paid more. They're not looking at who's a higher possible prospect in the draft. All of that causes anxiety. They are locked in, fiercely driven like an unflinching machine, believing that they put the work in to get the opportunity. And when the opportunity comes, they attack. They're not always successful when they attack, but they attack. And then they hope for another opportunity. That's how I work with them.
That's awesome, man. How many athletes are you struggling to like you talked about the majority of your work's reality therapy. So obviously like, as you kind of break down the ages, it's tougher for younger players to be self-aware. Would you agree with that? Or would you say that is there a certain age that players can increase that skill faster? That was one of the questions that was asked because my first presentation was how to be your own coach, and
Yeah.
self-awareness is something that I talked about.
Yeah, that's really good. And in sports psychology and psychology, we know that everyone's brain develops and is not fully developed until age 25. So your frontal lobe is the last part of your brain to develop, and that's the part that allows you to make good judgments and do things the right way. That's why we get in so many problems as younger people in high school, and we do stupid things, and in college we do stupid things, or when we're drafted 18 to 20, it usually is we do stupid things. So the idea is that you need to be aware of that to try to not do stupid things. And the idea of doing that is to have, again, insight and awareness of what is your purpose here? Why are we here? What am I doing? Is it on purpose and for purpose? And then what I do is when I work with different levels of athletes or different age, I just try to relate it to whatever is going on with them. Because a youth athlete that's 13 has a lot ahead of them, and we need to slow things down than an athlete that's 28 and in the minor leagues. We need to look at it from different ways. But the idea is that reading up on sports psych and understanding a little bit better, I always tell all of my first contact with athletes, I tell them to buy the book Mind Gym. Should buy it. I didn't write it. but the guy who wrote it's good, and it's got little 3-page paragraphs on all the things in sports psychology. And the idea is when you get more insight and understand how you're thinking and how you're feeling, you're definitely going to be able to be more aware to control yourself. Baseball is a game of failure. It's a grind. It's super hard. And if you don't have this tool between your ears, reality-based, you're going to have a big struggle. Because that batting average doesn't make you feel good at the end of the day because it always goes up and down.
No, it's great. Really quick, this will kind of be the last thing I think we have time for today. I'll probably call you later. My mind's spinning right now. But one of the times back when we were doing a lot of kind of one-on-one lessons, there was kind of a story where a player was really struggling, and it ended up being, it seemed like it was kind of mental, and talking through some of the feelings and talking about that stuff. And I'm not a psychologist at all. It was just kind of, we talk about having like feel, right? It felt like that player, needed that in that moment. And I realized 25 minutes into our 30-minute session that like I had talked the whole time, and I was like, guys, like, I'm not charging you for this. Like, you guys came to hit, like, I'm sorry, you drove 45 minutes and we talked, blah, blah. Both parents sat in. It was the mom and the dad and the player. And I felt terrible. I literally lost sleep that night. I was like, I literally wasted this dude's time. Like, they drove 45 minutes for this thing. Like, I didn't talk, I barely hit. And I was just, trying to be impactful in that moment. And turns out next day he goes like 3 for 4, and they're like, feels great. I got a text like later, like, at that night, the next day, it was like, whatever you said to him, like, whatever made him feel better. The player texted me, and it was like a giant sigh of relief, but I spent like probably the better part of 24 hours being like, I wasted that dude's time, feeling really bad about it. Because that's not my skill set. Like, he should have, that was what he needed. He should have gone somewhere with a little bit more professional background in that. With that being said, is his parents had all the same ideas that I had, but they weren't able to convey it to the young athlete. Do you work with a lot of young athletes, or do you have a lot of challenges where athletes aren't necessarily wanting to listen to the wisdom of their parents? And how do you, other than saying like, hey, your parents are smart, you're going to get this when your frontal lobe closes, and you're going to really wish you listen more to their wisdom. How do you navigate that with a young athlete and kind of a family aspect?
So a really good point. So a lot of what I hear all the time when people come into my office is that, yeah, this is what parents are saying, but kids don't always listen to their parents. I have a 9th grade daughter. She doesn't listen to me about sport-related psychology issues with their sport. This is the way that it is, and it's okay. And that's why people like me have a profession. But the idea is that when people come in for help, youth athletes, I tell them before they become a client, your youth athlete has to make a commitment to want to work on this, or it's going to be a waste of money. Because you can have all the talent in the world, but if your mind's not right, or you don't do things the right way, or you're not consistent, you're going to struggle. So having it be said from a different person, a licensed person, is helpful. And that day that you thought you wasted it for that kid, you didn't. You helped that kid, and you helped that family, and whatever you did by listening and talking with him, he was able to go out there and approach that guy really well. But that's why in pro teams, there are people like me. I used to work at the University of Miami. I was their sports psychologist for 5 years. I was the Marlins sports psychologist for 9 years. I'm the Miami Dolphins sports psychologist right now. I'm a sports psychologist for the Chicago White Sox as well. But what I do is, I also run the sports psychology program at my doctoral program in Florida. It's a D2 program called Nova Southeastern University. The whole idea is that I'm trying to get people more access to people like me that are able to coach the athlete up and remove the stigma of mental health. Because just like you have a hitting coach, having a mental coach is what the future is. And it's a developed skill, just like your arm, or just like your speed, or just like your strength. And you can improve it. Because the idea is what you think and how you go about your thought process really affects your at-bat, how you play, and even how you listen to coaches.
Awesome. One question that came through the chat, and then we'll get Bryce on. How do you suggest that coaches learn to deal with their emotions? You talked about a reset for professional athletes. Now, these professional athletes range from 22 to 40, I'm guessing, if not even older than that. So I would imagine coaches fall into that category too. And I heard something the other day. You mentioned 25. I had heard the frontal lobe closing at 25, but I heard the other day that adolescence is now considered up to 32, which made me feel really good because I'm not 32 yet. And so I was like, yes, I'm still a kid. What do you maybe that's a totally different thing, but coaches obviously who range from, I mean, I was 23 when I was first dealing with 16-year-olds, and it was like the most chaotic year of my life. But that's kind of where, I think there were this question stemming from is how do coaches handle their emotions and to be good role models. That's the big thing. How do you be a good role model through your emotions when they get the best of you?
Yeah, just before this morning, I had a session with a coach on an NFL team, and we talked about this. And, the higher you go up in coaching, the more people examine and watch you. And depending on the culture of the team, some behaviors are good and some behaviors are taboo. So the reality is that some environments teach coaches to be aggressive and emotional and out of control, and you can get reinforced from that. And it's on ESPN all the time when you see that. But the reality is that this new generation of kids coming up, you have to realize that there's many different ways to get to your athletes. And I don't know about all you, but I don't really like watching my coach get out of control and yelling at me if I'm doing something wrong or acting ridiculous. But at the same time, the coach has to be aware of how he or she is presenting him or herself and what she wants to do. And it comes back around to insight and EQ and awareness. Like, the way I'm presenting myself to you right now is purposeful. The way a coach presents him or herself to his athletes or her athletes needs to be purposeful. And, my daughter, like I said, is 14, and everything changed 14 years ago. As a psychologist and as a youth coach myself and as a mentor and a teacher, is I treat everybody kind of like I would want my child to be treated. And that means high standards, working to be excellent, loving and understanding, and trying to hear what's being said by the person who I'm working with, get their perspective as well. Coaches, a lot of time, youth coaches are the most difficult coaching population is the coach who's afraid of losing his or her job out of wins and losses. And when you start treating the athletes like pieces of meat or tokens to help you get someplace better, a D2 program out of JUCO, a D1 program, a job in professional baseball, all of those coaches that try to get up by having great teams and not treating their players well, that's going to catch up with them in the end. The best coach I ever worked with in a totally different industry, this coach just got it. High level of expectation, high level of commitment, high level of caring and loving for that high level of understanding how hard it is to be a youth athlete as well. And, we do workshops. I do workshops all the time and help coaches be better, but it's usually always specific to each coach. Sorry if I got long-winded, my man.
No, that's perfect. There was one more quick one. Maybe if you can keep this one a little shorter. How do you express to, as a coach, do you express to the kids that if someone is negative, not to let that kind of negative energy, we talk about, I think the word we use is like cancer in the dugout.
Yeah. So perfect. So I like to give what's called a sandwich. You give a compliment, you give a critique, and you give a compliment. So the idea is if this athlete did something wrong, wasn't paying attention, was in the wrong spot, got lit up or swung at a pitch you didn't want, say, hey, I like the fact that you had a plan going for your at-bat, but it looks like you weren't following your plan. How can I help you follow that plan better next time? But let's go out there and have a good one. So never steer away from giving criticism. But the key is with kids, even my daughter and her team, they don't understand when a coach says, hey, you need to run harder or you made a bad pass. People who are listening that are athletes, it doesn't mean your coach hates you. Your coach is literally just saying, hey, that was a bad at-bat. The coach doesn't say you're a bad person. If, as coach, we say, yeah, it wasn't a good at-bat. Let's figure out how we can get the next at-bat better. Work with them. Be aware that they're interpreting what they're interpreting and they're young and they don't interpret the same way.
I got you. The best quote I heard on that was from Patrick Murphy, from softball coach from University of Alabama. He said, I don't always love what you do, but I love who you are. That was one of those quotes. So
yeah, and coaches that can continue to do that in team meetings, that's key. Athletes want to be developed, and athletes want to have fun, and athletes want to get paid in the end, and athletes want to be appreciated. Awesome. That's what I've learned from the athletes, at least.
Can you repeat that one more time, just in case people want to write that down? What do athletes want? What can we do as coaches? Because this was actually, so we talked about like athletes. What do you need to be empowered? And we kind of were listening to athletes.
The best athletes want to be told the truth about what is wrong and how they can get better. Okay, the best athletes athletes should want coaches to care about them as human beings. They should also care about getting paid and in the end, but they should also be focusing on that these are human beings, and the majority of these people that we coach aren't going to be $100 million athletes, aren't going to get a cup of coffee in the big leagues, aren't going to go D1 for baseball. Some will, but along the way, treat these players like your own family, have a really high level of expectation, be able to talk to them with reality, tell them the truth, but do it in a way that's not hurtful. I was rolling, so I don't remember what I exactly said, right?
No, that's awesome, man. I love it. Yeah. So if you guys have any questions, Rob is in the Slack as well. I don't know how much time we'll spend in there, but make sure if you guys have questions outside of there, want to be respectful of his time. If you guys have follow-up questions, feel free to either shoot him a DM or put them in the general chat would even be better. The chat we typically live in, I know some people are putting questions in the general chat. The chat we live in is the Savage Donkey University chat. Which again, this started as something small, which a few people understood. So I apologize for the name. But we'll go from there. So what I'm going to do is go ahead.
I put my email up there. I'll put my Twitter. If you guys want to follow me and contact me, you can do that too. Okay.
Awesome. Yeah. If you throw it in the chat or throw it in the Slack, both.
Yep.
Both are good. Awesome.
I'm not the most technologically sophisticated, so I hope it was helpful, guys.
Dude, that was awesome. I got some texts too. People are fired up. So some texts and some private messages already that you did an awesome job and killed it. So I really appreciate it. Thanks for being with us, man.
Anytime, my friend. I'll see you soon. Okay. Be
All
safe.
right.
Help you guys. Bye-bye.
Absolutely. All right. So with that being said, Bryce, I'm gonna have you jump on. I gotta find you. I'm gonna make you the spotlight video for mine. Go ahead and unmute yourself.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we're good, man. We can hear you. So, guys, this is Bryce Biel from Legacy Performance. Obviously, he's staying at home right now to help us out. Hopefully, you guys got your dowel rods, your PVC pipes, your shower rods. You guys were able to be creative, and your backpack full of books. That looked like a drill bag, Bryce. Milwaukee?
Yeah, there's a lot of electrical equipment in there.
There you go. Okay. Awesome. Awesome. So we're ready to get down to our workout piece of it, and then Nate will do some hitting stuff, and we'll do questions and wrap up at the end. Yesterday was kind of cool. By the way, at the end, guys, we had kind of people who wanted to stick around and kind of talk. We kind of had a more private conversation on Zoom, so that was pretty fun. If you guys want to do that, our questions and wrap up don't have to end right at the end time. We can kind of go through this. I want to be respectful of the presenter's time. Rob was just absolutely killing it, so I let him go over a little bit.
Yeah, that was awesome.
Yeah, we'll let Bryce kind of go. He'll go through the workout, the devotional. Nate will go, and we'll go from there.
So, easy thing. I know at this time it's a little bit confusing in the sense of how do you get your workout in. I've been playing around it with our kids, whether it's at the school I work at, schools we kind of organize stuff with, and even my kids at my gym. So, anything you possibly have that you can either hold, use, I've like milk jugs. We've had, the massive water gallon jugs. We've seen people make concrete, essentially weights. At this time, it's as long as you guys keep moving, but you guys, master the normal movements, like hinging, squatting, rowing, pressing, you can do all your shoulder care. I know people talk about shoulder care, and I'm sure they will. Anything with the J bands, your weighted balls, you can still get all that in. And it's the same thing for workouts. It just, you have to be a little bit more creative than normal. So for us today, I'll show you some mobility drills. We'll go through some upper body mobility drills with PVC pipe, as well as some lower body. And then we'll go into basically a backpack workout, something not complicated. It's just trying to get you guys moving and to keep moving. And if anyone has questions at the end, I'll stick around to all the way to that as well. So first thing we're going to do, we're going to end up doing PVC swing. So top hand, it's right in the top, just right in the middle of my palm. I'm just rocking up, pressing up, holding it for a couple counts. I'll go on the side so you can see it. I don't have the greatest range of motion in my upper body compared to, I'd say, most baseball players and most athletes. You shouldn't be like me. You go 10 each side, so I can go pretty quick through it. I'm actually slightly pressing up and out. Just nice and controlled. Nice little swing at the bottom. Got to count my reps sometimes. I can't count and talk at the same time, so I do apologize. A little bit harder than it actually is. So same thing, we'll switch sides. You'll notice that my right side is a lot worse than my left. And big thing with, I'd say, any athlete is being able to be the same range of motion on both sides. It's something that I'd say people neglect a little bit sometimes, especially youth or middle school or high school athletes. You know, they don't really want to focus on the, I'd say, minute or finite details. I'll be honest, if you want to stay healthy and you want to be able to play for a long time, your range of motion is just as important, if not more important, than the actual workouts. Because if you can't get in the proper plane of motion or proper movement pattern, you're not helping yourself. You're actually debilitating yourself. So next one, we'll do distraction. So we'll do a couple different ways. Normal way, I grab a little bit further outside my shoulder, straight up, trying to keep it as close to my back as possible when I come down. So I'll have a little bit of bend for this one in my arms. We'll do 10 of these as well. Just something simple range of motion. Just, you know, it's like I said, doing daily things. Even though it's not hard, it can help over time. Next one we'll do, arms will be on front, about the same distance. I'm a little bit more in. We're going up and around with the right arm, then track it back. So up and around, then track it back. So we'll do 10. As you notice, now my range of motion is, say, a little bit questionable at times. The big thing for, I'd say, any athlete is, you know, like I said earlier, being able to dominate, you know, every part of the game, you know, whether it's on the field or off the field. You know, this is a very large component for your physical growth. But at the same time, I know the gentleman before was talking about mental growth and emotional growth. It can help you as well. Obviously, kind of like Ryan said, I'm not a doctor, but seeing the growth in people over time, it's unbelievable what you can see as kids get into their programs, or there are specific programs that someone created for them, and the mental and emotional intelligence that they can pick up on is unbelievable. So we'll do 10 each side. Oh, man. Next one, I just do trunk rotation. So kind of like just on a back squat, essentially a high bar back squat. This one you can do sitting down in a chair or standing up. If you're standing up, what I want you to not do is essentially I don't want you rotating your hips. They shouldn't move. It's all coming from your spine. So I'm going to ground myself. I'll scoot a little bit closer. Hopefully I don't hit anything. A little closer. I'm just trying to move my rotation through my actual spine. I'm trying to utilize every part. Big thing is, guys, you can see where I'm limited in my movement, especially in my spine and my legs, because, like I said, when you don't do things right, they do come back to haunt you over time, and they definitely did. I've had 11 knee surgeries, so it's not the greatest. Sorry, we'll go to swings again. 10 swings. We'll go through this 2 sets, be 10 of everything. And I'll kind of quickly go through it. If I lose count, you can call me out. Sometimes I miss my reps. On this, gets them talking and going. Big things, if you guys have questions at the end, like I said, you know, big thing is things don't have to get complicated. Right now at your age, apologize, there's a big truck coming by. You really want to master the movements. You know, think about things you do every day. You got to pick something up off the ground, you're going to squat. You got to bend over and grab something, you're going to hinge. You're going to press something or move something, your scaps have to retract. If you're going to pull something, scaps have to have the downward rotation and retract. So everything you guys do every day is very similar to lifting, just not, I'm assume, not a lot of you are going to think about that. So being able to master those movements, hinge, squat, press, rows, simple things every day, that's what builds up to what you guys see on TV is those guys being that physical specimen. They've mastered, a lot of those guys have mastered that movement over time. And they still do it because it's still important to have the same movement patterns, if not better movement patterns over time. So we'll do 10 of the double arm. We'll go to our single arm. I'm going to do 5 each side. Make sure you're trying to keep your athletic base the entire time. So 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And obviously there is a dynamic warm-up before, but I know we're running a little late on time, so I don't want to waste anyone's time. Other things, just kind of movement patterns for baseball, softball, really anyone in general. We'll go over some movement patterns for upper body and lower body. We'll do behind the neck press. Now, would I want people doing this with weight? No. For me personally, no. But as just a general warm-up, getting that scap movement is ideal. We'll go 10 behind the neck presses. I'm trying to keep myself from arching when I'm doing this, so I'm a little bit chin down, pelvis is neutral, just nice control, feeling those scaps pull in. Make sure your rib cage is not poking out. I want to keep that rib cage down, so I have good posture as well. I'm bracing myself. And that's done. After that, essentially think like a push-up or a bench press. I'm in an athletic stance again, pressing straight out, pressing out as far as I can. Before I go back in, I'm going to retract, pull all the way in, squeeze and hold. Trying to keep our shoulders relaxed. I don't want to be shrugging up. Pressing out, retract, pull in, right below our chest or our sternum, back out. So do 10. So it'll be a retraction. Arms should stay slightly bent or locked. Pull in, squeeze, back out. We'll do 10 of those. After that, you're going to be in a hinge position. So RDL position or bent over position. We'll hinge. Get into our hinge. 10 rows. After that, we'll do overhead squat. So mind you, like I said, got really bad knees, so you'll see it pretty quickly. I'm going to shift pretty much forward because my lats and my knees are pretty bad. So overhead squat. We'll do 10. Think about a screw right on top of your head. Pull it straight up. Oh, yeah, they're hurting today. We'll do 10 there. So we do 3 sets of that. Got to back up a little bit. We'll do 3 sets of that. So it's simple patterns that are done a lot in lifting, life every day, just simple things that you guys can work on. For our first workout, like I said, utilize what you can at home. So I'm working on my buddy's house right now, and he's got a big electrical bag, and it's say probably 50 pounds. We're actually going to do with our backpack, we're going to do a good morning. So athletic stance, feet are about shoulder width apart. I could probably put that down, but we'll deal with it there. Athletic stance, stand up tall. Backpack's pretty snug to me. I can put my hands on the front. Slight knee bend. Think about leading with your hips back. I'll give you a cue. It's not going to work for everyone. You should think you're almost falling backwards, like that's the sensation you should feel, but by no means necessary should you fall back. So knees bent is position 1. Position 2, I start to hip shift back. 3, we're going to continue that hip shift. and then up. So 1, knee bend. 2, hip shift back. Weight's going to transfer my heels. 3, I'm going to continue to push back. So feel through my glutes and hamstrings. We're going to do 10. So I'll do this one with you. 3, 4. You can see on a side view. 1, 2 is hip shift. 3, finish the range of motion. A little bit quicker. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Right from there, you're going to 10 goblet squats or backpack squats, so you'd be front loaded. Same concept, about shoulder width. For right now, toe straight ahead, unless you're somebody who has a slight turnout with their foot. Same thing, like you're sitting down in a chair. If you're younger or older, you got weights, use them. It's fine. So 10 squats. Can't lie, a little bit sore. Squatting, I think we did bands yesterday, and I think got up to like 400 pounds. 10 squats. After that, with your backpack, I'm holding the top handle of mine. I got 2, but I'm really using the top. Top handle, single arm, reverse lunge. So right arm up, reverse lunge, drive up. Same thing, other leg, left hand, left leg, 10. After that, put the backpack on. Make this a lot tighter. We're gonna do a push-up walkout. So push-up position, walk yourself out, hold for 3 counts, walk all the way back in. So I'm gonna put this on the ground. Hopefully I can move that cord. Sorry guys. So we'll go push-up position. So I am a little bit outside my shoulders, maybe a little bit, just because of my pecs and injuries. Sorry. So we'll make it a little bit harder. 2 count down, 2 count hold, up, walk out, squeeze your core, walk back in, push up, 2 down, 2 hold, up, hold the nuts balls out, walk out back, walk back in, walk back out, 2 count down, 1, 2, 1, 2, walk back out, walk back in, 1, 2, walk back in. We'll do 5 of those. So we'll go through that 3 times. After that, I'm still using my backpack. Oh, can you get up higher? I'm just doing a single arm farmer carry. So try to put my scap in. We'll walk. Go as long as you want. I did a minute each arm earlier today trying this out. And with that, I can show this on the ground. We did a scap series paired with this. This is a second part of your circuit. So you do a single arm farmer carry with your backpack. 30 seconds each arm. Easy scap series. Sure, all of you guys have done it. Y's, T's, 10, A's, 10. Then I do a Superman pull down, relax on the ground, back up to a W, out. So in, drop, retract those scaps in, back out. You'll do 10 Y's, 10 T's, 10 A's, 10 Superman pull downs to a W, 10 of those. We did 5 sets. And the last thing we added with that, let me turn this, I do apologize. See if you can see it. Yep. You can do wall slides. So you'll notice, let's get down a little bit. Hands should be against the wall straight up. Try to keep your wrist and forearm in the wall. A little back on the wall, you'll notice I start to come off the wall pretty quickly when I go down. So I'm going down, and I come off right here. I want to hold that position, 5 seconds, back up. You can do it with both arms. Big thing is have that slow slide down and make sure you're trying to stick on the wall the entire time. And we went through that 5 times. So, Ryan, are you there? No.
Yeah, man. What do you got?
So, big thing, and I'll take a minute doing this, is that girls, guys, doesn't matter, you know, young, old, be able to be coachable during all this. You know, if you have questions on movement patterns, technique, you know, you want some help on stuff you use at home, I'm on the Slack as well. Please feel free to reach out to me. I have absolutely no issue. Other part is be smart. You know, we were all one of you at one time. I love to push myself. You know, I do like to feel the struggle, essentially, I guess you could say, of a workout. But at the same time, you do have to understand that you're a performance athlete and your job is to perform. So when it comes to certain aspects, you know, like you want to bench 225 30 times. Okay, awesome. You got a lot of strength, but at the same time, can you put that to use in what you do? And I ask that question all the time to all of our kids. You know, I want to do stuff and have them understand why they're doing it, how they're doing it, how is it going to help translate. That's what matters. You know, we can do all the funky, you know, we can do a bunch of funky drills, essentially. You know, a lot of weird plyos and different scenarios like that, but you do have to start to ask yourself, why am I doing this? How is it going to help me? What is it going to help me with? You know, there has to be a reverse answer to it. So if I'm a coach, you know I'm doing different parts of a hang clean to introduce power, stuff like that, and triple extension. So that's it for me on that end. I know I'm supposed to give a devotional. To kind of make this quick, I had the nice conversation with Ryan about this, actually. So we'll start on the back part of it. I'm actually supposed to get baptized. That'd be what? Saturday, day before Easter. Easter Virgil, or the night before. Obviously, with all this going on, it's not going to happen. But that's okay. So, long story short, it's actually hard to talk to when people are listening. That's for sure. let's do it like this. I'm 29, not that old, so to speak. But I've had a lot of stuff happen to me in the past. A lot of friends passing away. I'd say a lot of adversity, like everyone goes through it. Freshman year had one of our best friends pass away. Senior year had another best friend pass away. And then recently in college had some other people pass away in the same time. In November, I had one of my clients pass away who is very close to family. Sister, brother, they trained with me for 5 years. I saw the kid grow up in front of my eyes. And when I got the phone call from his sister, who told me lost it a little bit, didn't know why, and it's something I always questioned. For years, I always questioned it in the sense of, why is this happening? Why these kids? Why this scenario? I had a lot of pain, a lot of, I say, anger built up, just, not really knowing why, like I said. It came down to it, I started having, those kind of thoughts of, like, could I have done something? Could I have done more? Anything along those lines is, I'm sure many, many people go through and think themselves. But we went to the funeral, and they were saying some prayers, and I didn't feel right in the sense that I didn't understand everything that was being said, especially when it was positive coming from, verses in the Bible and such. And it kind of ate away at me for a while. And that's one of the many reasons that I started to go about learning about how to get baptized and go through learn about Catholicism. And also on the personal side, don't get me wrong, I think Ronnie can attest. I'm a good person. I have a good heart. I love all the kids I work with. Their success means, more to me than anything. And it's not even the sports success. It's the life success. Understanding the moments you're going to learn from, you're going to fail, you're going to succeed, stuff like that. That means the most to me is when a kid can come back like a couple weeks ago and say, hey, I really look up to what you do, how you do it, how you go about yourself, how you work with kids. That means more to me. Or him saying, hey, my work ethic is the way it is because of you. What you did with us, how you helped us, how you treated us, how you got to know all of us like that. That's my satisfaction. That's what I want people in the sense to know that we help them in that way. And I think the one thing that was missing is that I kind of had an emptiness with all this that went on. And I think I was trying to find something in myself to help with this. And in return, I started meeting with a couple monks. And I started to go through the process of becoming a Catholic and getting baptized. Not only for myself, but also for past reasons, but also trying to figure out, who I really am as a person and how I can become a better husband because I am married, better friend, just a better person in general. And it's been challenging, you're learning a new language. Yeah, go ahead. And you're finding new views essentially in life and just in general. And it's been a definite awakening. And I'm 5 years ago, did I think I would be in this position, getting ready to be baptized and whatnot. No, it's not that. I always believed in God, and everything along those lines. I was terrified going into churches because every time I went into a church, it was for a funeral of a friend, and that was starting my freshman year, and I probably didn't know how to compact all the emotions with that going on at a young age. So that's kind of where I'm at now. Might be a little bit different than everyone else. I'm 29, getting baptized, but like I had the conversation with Ryan about it, and it's a tough conversation to have, I think, with anyone. But I think the first thing Ryan said was, congratulations, that's awesome, and it means a lot to me, especially just because I'm not only trying to be a better coach at the same time, but I'm trying to be a better person for everyone, not just myself. So Ryan, I did appreciate that more than I think you'll probably ever understand, but if you're listening, which you probably are, I do appreciate that greatly.
Yeah, man. Hey, I appreciate you coming on and sharing that. I didn't mean to put you on the spot. I just thought it was kind of a cool story. Anybody getting baptized as an adult, I think, has a different perspective than what we do, and they're kind of what we believe in. We're obviously not trying to shove anything down anybody's throat, but just kind of share our experiences from that aspect. I thought that was a really real thing. Everybody kind of does their aspect differently, and kind of shares it differently. So I thought that was really cool, man. Thanks for doing that. Thanks for being on. Thanks for the awesome workout. Nate's going to do some hitting stuff now, and love to have you in Slack. I'm sure there'll be some questions and some things outside of that too. Feel free. Bryce said, and he's on Twitter too. So
yeah, I'll put everything on Slack for you guys. We have daily workouts, so feel free to utilize those. Tag us in a video if you have questions. Like I said, I'll be in Slack, or DM me on Twitter or Instagram. It's either Twitter's Biel Bryce, Instagram's Legacy Performance, but I'll put all that in there. I appreciate all your time. I'm going to have to actually go buy that book too that you guys were talking about earlier, because I do have a lot of downtime to read, and so does everyone else.
Awesome, man. Well, hey, thanks for being on, and we'll talk to you soon, all right?
I appreciate it. Thank you.
All right. Nate, you're up, bro.
What's up, everybody?
Great hat, by the way, and an even better mustache.
That's right, man. We're at the facility back home, where I want to be at.
Yeah, what the heck? We're supposed to stay home. You're making me
breaking the rules.
Hey, you want to do this real quick too, just since you're there? Do you want to do are you able to do a kind of a quick tour, just kind of show people what it looks like and how we have it set up? Our facility is not big, by the way. We have a kind of a small facility. We have one and a half cages and more TV screens than TVs.
So yeah, we got this all stuff. All the where the magic happens. Sorry, the fiance is hiding somewhere. She's over there. She came hang out. Yeah, we got a cage. Machine. Can you guys see what's going on?
Yeah, it's like up to the ceiling though.
Sorry, I'm trying to There we go.
Yeah, it's pretty small.
Kind of the spot. We always hear that when people come in that Instagram and Twitter doesn't do it justice, but it's kind of the spot.
I guarantee you Zoom doesn't do your mustache justice either.
It doesn't. It looks extra red in the video, so it's solid, big ginger mustache guy. But, that's kind of the, there's the lobby where, you can hang out and do your homework, or the throwing room where Coach Bach gets all his stuff done. So I had a couple stuff scheduled, but respect your guys' time and I went a little over. I'm just going to go over one of the main drills I wanted to go over today. Then I'll make sure that I put everything that I was going to do in Slack, and then we have on our website all the drills are they explain everything to do, and we have videos. So you guys check that out. Make sure we put all that in there. I'm trying to move this back real quick. All right, so the one I want to go over, it's called Walkthrough. You guys have all seen Happy Gilmore. It's kind of a slow version of that. So what we're going to do is we're going to start with our feet together. We're really going to focus on trying to get that weight in our back heel when we go. So what we want to do is we're going to put our feet together, then you're just going to step forward, back, and then swing. But what we really want to focus on this drill is I want you guys to really think about really keeping like your weight in your back heel when you keep going. Try to maintain that heel pressure in the ground with your back foot. I know you guys all, if you have a tee at home or like a net, or if you're like fortunate enough where you have a cage where you have like someone can flip to you, you can do this with flips as well. I'm by myself, so I'm just going to do tee work. I'm not going to make Samantha throw me flips right now. But stuff you can do at home, it's flips or tee. You can do all the drills with either one. So I'm going to attempt to do this. My mobility kind of sucks, so we'll see how it goes. But I just want to get to here, nice and relaxed. I'm going to step here and go. Super simple. What we really want to focus on, like I said, is just maintaining that heel pressure in your back foot when you go.
Can you show us one more time too? I know one thing that just happened in that last video. This will be recorded, so you might have to go back and look at it. Is a lot of times what guys do is what Nate just did, and it's totally unintentional, about where the foot is pointing. So when you step behind that, your rear foot a lot of times will basically externally rotate. It'll externally rotate your hip. And so what we want to do is when we step, we want to try to keep that as neutral as possible or slightly in. So yeah, that's from there. So what he did before, and it's something that's tough to think about, is a lot of times it'll open up that way. So make sure you're watching that with your athletes too. One of the things we measure with those big metal things that you can kind of see behind is torque. So literally above right Nate's hand at the back of the cage there on the other side of the net.
You're like Vanna White.
Is we can measure basically what your foot is doing, what your hip's doing. Is when we talk about torque on the rear foot, is how much your foot should turn this way, but because we're grabbing the ground, how much pressure is being held from you kind of spinning this direction. But if, creating more torque, obviously your foot's going to stay stay straight while you're turning, if that makes sense. So how much you're kind of grinding against the ground that way. So when you do the walkthrough, that's one of the things that we feel is kind of important. Sorry, Nate, I didn't mean to.
No, you're good. You want me to do it again the right way? Because my swing is trash.
You are swinging a stealth. You are swinging a more stealth, though, that people talk about for years, so that's cool.
Nice and chill. We're going to get to here. Kind of ride out that heel as best as you can. Super simple, easy drill to do at home. I know, it's easy just kind of just like, oh, I'm going to go swing. Then you just take 50 swings, normal. You can build in drills, help you guys out. There is another good one that I will say real quick before I get you guys out of here. If that one is difficult for you to like hold your heel while you do a walkthrough, you can call, or what we call a hook 'em drill. So it's kind of for people who have a hard time doing the walkthrough or can't really feel the heel pressure. So the hook 'em's super simple. All you do is it kind of explains itself. You're taking your front foot and you're just hooking kind of around your leg. Then you really want to feel like that heel pressure in your back foot, and then we're just going to step out. So that one for me, like I probably need to hook 'em because my mobility in my heel, my dorsiflexion is not good because I'm getting old. But that one's super simple. You can kind of really feel that back heel kind of grinding into the ground with the hook 'em drill. That's another good one to kind of like build up to walk through if you need to. But yeah, that's kind of just for you guys' time's sake. It's kind of all I got for, I know we went over a little bit. Appreciate Rob and Bryce did a great job today.
Yeah, Rob's stuff was awesome. Really quick, I'm going to share my screen in just 1 second. Nate, if you have anything else to kind of add, do you want to talk about your verse today at the end of your thing? Do you remember what it was?
Yeah, I thought I had the devotional. That's why I wrote that down on my sheet.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
I didn't read it right. Sorry.
No, you're good. My bad.
And yeah, if you guys have any questions on that stuff, we'll make sure we have it in Slack. And I think I put my social media stuff in there the other day, but you can always follow me on Twitter and Instagram. I'll make sure I put that back.
Awesome. Cool. So I'm going to share my screen really quick. So this slide here, what he's talking about with holding his heel. So if you guys can kind of see, we've got foot pressure. When we talk about those big metal things, we've got foot pressure on one side. One thing that we used to think is that we had to, and Nate and I talk about this all the time, the ideal way that he's referring to is the ideal. He's talking about, basically being able to ride a straight line from your tibia up through your femur into your glute and be able to maximize that. However, we have to be able to get into athletic position and maintain our hinge. there are many players, hitters and pitchers, who get up on their toes. And if they can maintain their hinge, I'm good with it. And that's where video comes into play. Like, we're not just trying to hit metrics on an app. We talked about this with Blast yesterday. And despite this player right here, you can see he's obviously on more of the front part of his foot. You can see that small little blue dot on the bottom part of this, meaning that he's like just barely on his heels. He's kind of transferring. If the player's hinging well, and if he's able to create torque, which that would be like good would be the top graph. The bottom graph is going to be bad. So there's some that are creating basically 66 pounds of torque. If you're over 45 pounds of torque when you're rotating, I'm good with that. And that's going to be, again, your rear foot. We're talking about the rear leg of how you're able to kind of hold your hinge and be able to create torque in your rear foot that way. While I would like to see the heat map back here be in your heel, I think we can drive, more force and pressure out of it, but it's going to be more important to hinge. And what we've seen when we looked at across all the data, as much as pitching coaches and hitting coaches want to talk about the heel right now, it is not mandatory. It is ideal. The hinge I would require is mandatory. So if I had to pick one or the other to kind of maintain, that's kind of how I would go about that. So I think those two drills that Nate talks about are a great example of different ways to create adaptations to do what you're looking for. Hopefully that makes sense. That's all I got for today. We'll do question and answer now, and I'll hang out for a little bit. And we can kind of maybe do a small breakout like kind of yesterday happened. So if you guys are good and you guys got what you needed out of this, see ya. You guys want to hang out for a little bit, or you have questions or comments? Honestly, comments work too. Like, if you totally disagree and you're like, hey, I found this, like, I want to hear it. I want to know what we're doing wrong, what we can do better, perspective, right? Like I talked at the very beginning about looking at a 6 from the other perspective, thinking it's a 9. Want to hear from you guys too. So hopefully we can do that. We'll see where everybody goes. Welcome, everybody. You're welcome. Thank you to everybody volunteering their time. This is way easier to organize than it is to actually be out here and present. So appreciate everybody donating their time. As we get smaller too, feel free to unmute yourself.
Hey, Coach Nate, can I see the C on the wall?
Yeah, bro, I got you.
Sick.
Peg just committed to Aurora.
Yeah, I just saw that.
So Ed's question is, do you find kids who don't stay in their heels tend to be more off balance when they finish their swing? It really depends on their dynamic balance and how they yes, right? Because they, like the low and away pitch, they can get out front. There's other issues that are caused by not being ideal, right? So it's basically picking which negative we're okay with to produce a positive. And when they finish their swing, I'm not as concerned. I want them to be in the right positions right before contact and at contact. Once the ball leaves the bat, it's on your bat for 0.0008 tenths or millionths of a second or thousandths of a second, I think is what that is. And then I'm not concerned with it anymore. So I'm concerned about how they get to the ball, not necessarily how they finish. I think the finish can tell us a lot about what happened before. But it's not something that I definitely make a mandatory thing on that side of things. And there's give and take everywhere on anything. Like if I'm talking about building a robot and he's in his heels, and I'm going to create that. But if we're talking about like humans who are master compensators and the best athletes are master compensators, then I'm going to allow that compensation over to be in your toe to hinge rather than force them to be in their heel, which a lot of times what happens is we see guys get upright and then we see an actually steeper path and not a good plane just because they think holding the heel is more important than what they're trying to do. So I hope that answers your question. Maybe we'll find out more on that. But yeah, ideally I would love guys to be able to stop and start and be really, really balanced at the end of their swing. I think depending on, especially on the age level too, the older guys get, the more I'm worried about balance. Young players, I'm not worried about it as necessarily. I define stability and balance probably a little differently than other people. Would love to hear your guys' definition of what balance is. And and kind of like how you look at balance. What is your definition? You can go ahead and unmute yourself. What's your definition of balance, Ed?
I mean, with the balance on there, I look for more, like you said, like going towards the ball and not really as much afterwards. Because like with this kid that I'm talking about, he tends to finish on his toes quite a bit, more so when he's trying to go after an outside pitch. And I think that's more of just he doesn't control. He goes straight forward instead of going to the ball a little bit too much. But when we try to get his heels to stay in the ground, it like as he goes to the ball, it throws all of his weight backwards out of the box, and it just throws his whole swing off. So like we've sacrificed him trying to keep that heel in the ground to just go out and try to make good contact and not worry about the balance after he makes contact with it.
Yeah, and man, I love that. And I think what's really challenging sometimes is coaches want to make compensations right away, all the time, to try to address their bias and preference. Guilty as charged, myself as well, because we have to understand like a lot of what we think doesn't play. Like we have a failure complex even as coaches, like, oh, that won't work, instead of focusing on like what does work. And a lot of times we try to like help players compensate towards our preference and bias of what it's supposed to look like rather than what the actual production is supposed to be. And I'm totally guilty of that, especially, more so when I was younger, but there's times too where I have to like question myself and, ask myself, is this preference? Is this bias? But I think they're two totally different things. Or is this something that like is actually important towards the task of producing results on the field?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I don't have as much technology as like what you guys have in your facility, but like, because I'm just kind of starting and doing this full time and everything. But like I do a lot of trial and error type stuff. If it works for them, then it works. If it doesn't, then we just kind of go back and we might try something different, or we just like let it ride if they can, still make quality contact and are still producing pretty well.
I say this all the time, and it's so weird considering of what we do have at our facility. If let's say like I went into the college ranks right now and they said, hey, you have a $10,000 budget and you can buy whatever you want. I would probably buy like a couple blast sensors and training equipment. I would buy what I've known that I've tested from a drill perspective that actually helps change the numbers versus worrying about measuring so much. And I think that's the cool part about having access to all these tools and all these toys and like being a complete psychopath and the worst businessman in the history of the world is like that's where like we've learned, like we've been able to test drills and do things. And like we shouldn't have bought a lot of the stuff that we purchased, but it was out of curiosity and it was out of like care for our athletes. And, there's people on these calls that I've bought equipment for just because I wanted to try it out just with them. And it's not necessarily conducive to running a business, but we've learned a lot, and we're not done learning. And I think that's kind of where it is. But and I think that's where people like that's where they're right. Like technology, like, oh, this big technology wave. Like if you're really good at helping people produce on the field, I can understand why you might technology. For me, I just think there's more to learn, and there's more. We're still if we're not measuring, we're still missing things. And I don't want to put our athletes at risk to like miss anything. And I think that like blending the gap and getting like the great experiences of, the guys who really understand approach and they know what it feels like to face Randy Johnson. Like that's probably like a very uncomfortable feeling. Like it gives me chills, like thinking about facing Randy Johnson. I've just seen it on video and on the, when you go to Louisville Slugger Museum, you can see it out of the hand and it like, comes to the glass or whatever. Like I can't imagine having to like have coaches in the dugout, like having to know what that feels like. But I do know what it feels like to have like your whole team depend on you and having some guy up there that like is about to get drafted. Who throws 94. Like I know what facing 94 feels like, with your whole team depending on you. So it's just different on that sense of how you can relate that emotional state to what we're kind of seeing. And then also understand the technology can only measure what it can measure. And then being like trying to use some sort of common sense and learn it and play with it enough that like what this is measuring up here really means nothing, but this little small piece is everything. And that's still, again, like we have to understand that it's what we currently believe. It's what we currently think, and that there's still room to get better. on that side of things. And that's where like these Zoom calls are really cool. And the biggest thing I've noticed on the Zoom calls that I've been on outside of this too, is that if I'm listening to a topic I feel like I'm very well versed on, I'm going to learn a better way to explain it by listening to other people talk about it. And I'm going to have like other questions that I'm going to be able to go back and like look at our data and look at our technology and look at the stuff that like, hey, maybe there's something different. He said this word and that made me think of this. So I think if we all got better at working together as an industry, I think we would. All we do is argue over verbiage. We're arguing over 6s and 9s, man. Like, from that aspect, in my opinion, especially on social media, you see the animosity. Like, it's one guy standing on one side and thinks it's a 6, one guy standing on the other thinks it's a 9. It's like just perspective.
But how do you get past that then? Because let's put it this way: I'm in the strength world. You're in the baseball world, and how many run-ins do we see like that? Where people can't, I'd say they more disagree with each other and they can't find a comprehensive way to actually, kind of have a conversation like we're doing right now.
What if it's okay to disagree? What if it's like okay to have like, what if preference and bias is okay?
Oh, I agree on that, but I'm saying is a lot of people that like or you said, I mean, is that people just want to disagree to literally just disagree, even if it's in the wrong context.
Why do you surround yourself with those people?
I don't. I'm saying like you go on Twitter and you see all the feeds of everyone and them going at each other. But how many times?
Are you like asking from an athlete's perspective? Like how do they navigate which guy to gravitate towards?
Yep.
Neither guy on either end of the spectrum.
That's what I figured with our conversation in the past. It's interesting because like even like I see it with baseball guys, I see it with strength guys where, they kind of like you said, one sees a 6, one sees a 9, it's proverbially it's the same thing, just flipped. But, how does an athlete, even if it's the best guy in the world, how does an athlete transition into that? How do they find their right answer?
Yeah, I think I think that's where, a guy, we had probably like a 2-week long conversation. And when I say 2 weeks, I mean like a little bit of chunks, like every day for 2 weeks, about why titles matter. Because I think people believe people with certain titles more than anything. And I'm also of the mind that like titles shouldn't matter. Like you don't need the credit to impact the outcome. I think I yesterday. And that's kind of something where like if you just want to move the needle for somebody or for an industry or for whatever, like you just kind of do the work. And the people that we should be focusing on are the guys who look at it from a side perspective that are like, oh, that could be a 6 or a 9, like,
Yeah.
And it's tough to delineate who that is because there's a lot of people who are maybe standing at different angles that like, hey, that could be a 6 or a 9, but I'm at this angle, so it's probably a 9, or like I'm at this angle, like it's probably a 6.
Yeah. Every time we talk, Ryan, and everyone else that's on here, I find it interesting because we both have different viewpoints, but they usually come along. But like you said, it's, I'd be shocked. I wouldn't be shocked actually, knowing our conversations. But with everyone else, like, how to cue a kid differently. What do people use? Like, if people really want to, like, they can learn from this, kind of like you said. But people have to have that kind of open mindset to be willing to do it, because most people, sometimes learning is a change that they don't really want to go through. They're kind of stuck in their mindset or their path because it's work, but they don't want to have, I'd say, future growth of it.
Oh, and I'm going to include you in this conversation if you can unmute yourself really quick.
Yeah.
Awesome. Owen, what is the ideal attack angle for most baseball players? Like in your mind that you've learned maybe at our facility, maybe elsewhere, whatever. What is in your mind is the ideal attack angle?
In my mind, I usually go just what I'm told, 5 to 16, but I see a lot of kids in our facility get away with like 26 and like 20s.
Get away with it, or time up flips? Like
time up flips, and sometimes off of the machine, but I haven't really seen anything live from that perspective.
The guys who are 25, 26, how much contact do they make off the machine?
Not as much as the guys that are lower.
Okay, so when you say get away with, you're talking about like, maybe hit track gaming and stuff like that, things like that. Okay, so let me go back to your experience. What is a drill we had you do this summer with plyo balls that maybe goes against our entire philosophy?
We set up side flips. I had the connection ball, and we just tried to hit line drives like at the pitcher's feet.
So yeah, basically ground balls. So line drives at the pitcher's
Yeah.
feet. What did that do for your attacking?
It lowered it, and I think the next tournament I hit like 5 singles in that game, in like that tournament.
But did you actually have a negative path?
No, it just fixed it to the 5 to 16.
So on the flip side of that, what we have to be careful of when we do that for athletes is if you continue to think this and you get really good at that, what might your attacking will be next year when you're in college?
It's going to be negative.
You continue to be negative. So when we talk about like using technology, like to create, we can use data to understand why this might have worked for Chipper Jones, why this might have worked for A-Rod. And it's also, we have to understand, like, this is what they were taught, so this is what they believe. And I talked about the other day is, like, belief matters. If you believe in what you do and you're trying to accomplish a task, there were some of the dumbest drills I've ever done, like, that I can't even imagine. I don't know why they worked, but when I think about it, I was telling guys to hit doubles and homers. And so even though what I was doing, like, the external cues played way better, like, 13 years ago when I was, 7 years ago, 8 years ago when I was like working with guys, like the external cues played over the dumb drills that I was doing. And I say dumb, but like, obviously maybe they weren't dumb. I don't know. I can't imagine that the drills actually did anything based on what I know about motor learning now, or what I think I know about motor learning is like those drills are basically just activity, but the external cue of like accomplishing a task, like they learn how to do that and navigate that. And, then you pat yourself on the back as a young coach, like, I do know what I'm doing, and you're like, in reality, we're just pointless as coaches. Like we're trying to get these guys to be, their own coach and really understand and have something to believe in. But I guess like, that's my point, Bryce, is like swing down, right? Like what if I said, okay, that worked for Owen and everyone should try to hit plyo balls with a long 36 bat at the pitcher's feet. Like everyone's going to be like, what? That's terrible. And then you're going to get like the people of the world that are going to be like, no, that's great. Finally, a data guy on blast says negative's good. And we're like, we're actually not going for negative. We're going for a feel. That feel can become real if you do it enough. So, and I think that's kind of where people, I was talking with a coach who was very big on like the vertical angle and like rearward turn and like big giant, like almost like exaggerating the uphill. And what he found is like he had some success, but he felt like when he felt that he actually was doing this, he had to exaggerate this move to get to a better plane, but it started to actually end up being this uppercut. And then he had to go back to thinking down. And when we can measure this with blast, we know like what ranges we have to be in. And that's where, when pro guys talk about your feel might change from week to week, like they're not wrong. Like the feel might change from week to week, and we can actually objectively measure that now. And I think that's where like, what's really cool if you have guys who can talk about that, like, hey man, like my feel changed week to week, and they're a Hall of Famer, like probably listen to that and figure out like what we can do to match that and objectively measure those feels so we can help guys. All we're trying to do with technology is objectively measure what the best did and what the best did. It's not so we can have an agenda or, push any of that stuff, push any particular, certification or things like that. And by the way, I think certifications are amazing. I don't think they're for everybody. I think if you're against like getting a certification, like, and you're offended by it, like you need to like look in the mirror and figure out why. But why people sell certifications are because they think they have value and they think they can like sell that service and they believe in it. That's fine. Like that's capitalism. You're allowed to do that. Like,
that's America.
Yeah, like don't be mad somebody's selling a certification. Like be like that's fine. If you don't find value in it, just don't buy it. But if you're it's like, oh my gosh, that's a ton of information. Like don't get stuck in not invented here land where it has to be your own idea and go learn from people that can do it. I mean, that's what these Zoom calls are for. And that's what certifications. People have put tons of time into doing that. Basically what strength coaches do, right? Is like the baseball version of strength.
Yes. And that's kind of the neat thing about, all these causes, as much as I deal with, baseball and softball kids in every sport, but in reality, kind of like we talked about, when we first met, I'm alwaase open to trying something, even if I'm terrible at it. But like I might go do one of the drive line pitching ones, not because I'm a pitching coach, just so I can understand the movements and mechanics and everything along those lines. because I deal with those kids every day. So it's people have to be comfortable stepping way outside of their box. And it's kind of like you said, you took chances on, how much equipment and whatnot. It might have been worth it, it might not. It's the same thing with, the educational basis that we're talking about as well, or even Q basis.
Yeah, man. I mean, for sure. I mean, there's the interesting thing, and I think one of the coolest parts, and I put this on my resume for a reason, it's like the lamest thing I've ever done, but it's like the most important thing I've ever done, is work with players at a park district setting who are 3 and 4 years old. And it was basically a 45-minute class, and just getting them to understand, like, to stand in a line, but knowing how to communicate with a massive amount of people where you're the only person there. Like, that helps you, especially when you have a mix of like autistic players and things that like haven't even been diagnosed yet. And like, you have to manage to like communicate on the simplest level. Like I literally had to teach how to stand in the box.
Yeah.
And then all the way up to like the pro level of like, we're talking about like holding like the rear heel and creating rear leg torque and vertical force in the like lead leg. Like, it's so different. Like,
yeah. And like you said, it comes down to like, every kid we've worked with, drastically different from each other. Whether it's the emotional intelligence piece or, just emotions in general or, mental in general, we can say, to even the communication part where, like you said, if I cue a kid to, we can say, I theoretically will say we're doing a med ball drill against the wall. And I'm telling the kid to, snap his hip towards the wall. Well, if I tell athlete A that, he does it. Athlete B, I say the same thing, 100% different scenario. He doesn't do it. His hips aren't rotating towards the wall. How do I cue that kid different? So, like, the communication part of what you guys do, what I do, it's so drastically different with every kid. But getting coaches to understand like how to have different verbal cues for each thing, it's hard to tell someone that. It's like I had the same conversation on like our Zoom roundtable, which I do want to get you on, by the way, where the guys like, well, I only have one cue for each, each movement. Like if I'm squatting, I want to think of like, sit on your heels. It's like, all right, but not every kid's going to understand that. They'll hear it, but they're not going to be able to visually do that and understand it. And it's like, you have to have more ways to communicate that it means the same thing, but it's just a different process of information for someone else. And that's like one of the big things in strength is that, and I'm assuming in baseball is, having different cues that they all mean the same thing. They're just put a little bit different to each kid or each athlete, so to speak.
Yeah, and I think that's where like the technology can come into play, because like if you're not actually, if your our eyes are only going to do so much. And I think one of the things, let me say this, is that we can make compensations too early in the athletes. We can go away from a cue too fast just because it doesn't work right away. And I think that's not necessarily like what we're trying to say. I think we're trying to say is like, if like the actual real, because the way that I try to talk is I try to talk in terms of real. Like I teach like our youngest athletes like real, and then I go try to create compensations after if they don't understand real or if they can't do real. But then I also want them to know what real is. So if they get past that compensation and start to overcompensate, then we can get back to real. And so that's kind of where like Owen was able to talk about like what the ideal attack angle is. Like, even though he has to feel this, if that ever becomes negative, he knows that he might have to flatten that out on that side of things. So again, we're trying to get guys to be their own coaches. And I do think that a lot of times when I said like coaches will create compensations, for these athletes, I think they just do it too early. I wouldn't give up on a kid after day 1 or day 2 because they can't feel real. In the ideal perfect world, feeling real is the best, in my opinion, my personal opinion. If you can feel real, you can always go back to real versus trying to play this guessing game and trick your body on one side or the other side. Like, when do you do that? I think it gets really confusing. So the first step for me is try to teach real. and then go towards those compensations and those cues away from that, in my personal opinion. I think there should be a certain level, and I think it depends on the level you're at. I think it depends on how many athletes you have to work with. I think the environment matters. I think the amount of tools you have, the amount of measuring tools you have, like training tools versus measuring tools you have. I think everything factors into like, when is that time to create the compensation? That's kind of on the coach, right? Like that's where feel comes into play, experience comes into play. All these things matter. Like it's not just like knowing what each number means.
Yep.
So, Ed, what do you think about that? I know you work with a lot of athletes.
Yeah, I mean, like I was just gonna ask, like, how long do you go through like certain cues or stuff like that? Because I mean, I have some kids who will work on it for, I'm kind of in the lesson model where I only see kids like once a week right now. But like, like I have one kid who he just hasn't been able to get his. I've been using Blast for 3 years now, so I mean, like that part of it's nice. So like his rotational acceleration it's just like non-existent. And even though he feels like he's using his hips and sometimes it looks like he's using his hips, it's just not firing at the right time. And we figured some stuff out, but like we worked for 4 or 5 months trying to find him something that in his brain works for him to get to the readings that we want. And it like finally just one day we tried something new and it all of a sudden it just clicked. It's, we would try it for 2-3 weeks, and then if we didn't see any change, it's like, okay, let's change gears a little bit. And luckily he's very cognizant of what he's doing and what he's trying to do. So he didn't get frustrated with it. He just kind of kept rolling with it. Whereas I know other kids, like you work on the same thing for 4 or 5 months with one kid, they're just going to get frustrated and be like, the hell with this. I'm over it. But on the flip side of that, just working through all those things, all of his other stuff started to improve as well. Like his bat speed has jumped like 12 miles an hour this year. His exit velocity is up almost 15 to 20 miles an hour on average. He was just kind of like totally out of whack, and just working through this, it kind of helped. But I mean, like, how often do you like stick with a certain cue or something that you're working on before you try to change it up?
Yeah, good question. I think the lesson model is really tough. That's something that we used to do, and we kind of went away from it. Our model went from seeing as many kids for 30 minutes a week as possible to seeing less kids a lot more often. And part of that so we can kind of address kind of those certain things, but also if you're trying to improve your rotational acceleration, like it's a lot of times just like, what's the engine like? Like, does the engine have, like, are you trying to get V8 performance out of a 4-cylinder? And like, what does the engine need to be? And so that's kind of where we've looked at it too. And we've added the strength component. I think eventually at some point, like, we'll just have like one program. Like right now we have you can kind of cherry pick what you want to do. And having to kind of look at what, basically, make it convenient for the parents and the players too, and what their budgets are and things like that. But I think the ideal, facility world would be like, this is one package. Like, you lift, you throw, you hit. This is kind of your schedule. Everything's customized based for you. But like, we know that if we asked people what they wanted, they would have said faster horses. And so if you think like you don't need a throwing program and you're a catcher, like, I promise you, like, velocity is going to like lower your pop time. If you think that, you're an outfielder and you don't need to throw because you play left field, like, it's really, really cool when you get an outfield assist at the plate. Like, throwing harder is probably okay. It's also like, when you learn how to throw harder, I promise you, like, rotational acceleration is probably going to go up because you're building your engine. You're learning how to use your scaps. You're learning how to rotate. You're learning all these things that like work together with each other. So we can do more all-inclusive work. More all-inclusive work with less activity and actually a smaller workload to accomplish more things. And that's kind of like this group setting. And we see kids more often to do that. I think in the lesson model, it's really tough because of what you said. Like, you see this kid for 30 minutes and he goes, like, ideally he's doing the homework that you're giving him. Ideally he's looking at your videos. Ideally, like, his parents are involved and invested and things like that. But from a rotational acceleration standpoint, that's supposed to assume sequencing. But sometimes it just means like it's a 4-cylinder engine versus an 8-cylinder engine, and finding a way to like improve that on that side of things. I guess from a cue standpoint, in a lesson model, you may end up going over things a lot of times. And I don't know about you, but when I first was giving lessons, my very first lesson basically went through like, hey, here's like what I think is important. Here's kind of my evaluation of where you're at now after watching them swing for a little bit. And then kind of here's the direction I want to go. From a very first lesson standpoint was so similar that I realized that like I wanted to get into like smaller groups, but I wanted to have that private personal lesson feel where like 3 kids could be working on something and I could pull a guy aside and give him that one-on-one attention when I wanted to. So I think like the perfect group size is like 3 to 4. You know, we've had to make adaptations and go up to 6 or 7, or even, you know, obviously some of our group sizes then are then 2. And sometimes you get 3 kids are sick and you get a one-on-one you got to kind of go from there. So I don't know if that's really answering your question on specific timeframes that I use to cue, but I think I look at maybe why things are a certain way. And if I have a person in my facility, or if there's somebody else that's renting that's a strength coach, and maybe I'm going to work with them and refer them to them if I don't think the engine's big enough. But I think for me, from a cue perspective, I want to know like what the reel is going on before I understand like if I need to like make a cue up from there. And there's definitely cues that like I've completely made up. Like if you tell a kid to stand on his head and he gets it, like stand on his head, and then he's gonna go, and if he's a big leaguer and he goes on the LB Network and says, "I think I'm standing on my head," then everyone's gonna like that's gonna be the next wave on Twitter. And like that's why like for me like reel's got to be first, and then you can compensate away from reel. I don't know if there's a set timetable of how long you should try to do reel. I think it just depends on the kid. It probably depends on his frustration level, and also maybe how close he is to like having to compete, right? Like if it's like week 1 and it's his first lesson, he has tryouts like the next day, because it's like I'm sure if you do lessons, you get the same thing where, hey, I've got high school tryouts in a week, and I like get a refresher. Like, dude, the kids you're competing against have been training here since November. Like, you can't wait till the last week of February to like get in and like hope you get like a 30-minute like tune-up. Like, what are we gonna help you with? These kids have been throwing weights around, like swinging weighted bats, like hitting off a machine. Like, they're just ahead of you on that side of things. But that might be a situation where I'm like, hey, all right, we need to know right away in this 30 minutes, I need to know what you're really good at. And I need you to capitalize that in your tryouts. I need you to be really confident in what you're really good at. You need to take this with your tryouts. We're not going to develop anything. We're just going to identify what you're good at. And I'm going to make you really confident in that. And I've got 30 minutes to do it, so I better be really efficient. Versus a kid in November, I might try to do reel for, we might not even talk about like compensation methods till January. It just kind of depends on that side of things. So see you, Pink.
Yeah, I mean that helps out quite a bit. I mean, I'm just in the spot now where I don't have my own facility. I go between like 2 or 3 different places every week. You know, it's just like right now for me doing everything on my own. It's just like the lesson model is what has worked for me. But my goal is eventually to have my own place where I'm set there, and then be able to do kind of like the group type setting, or almost like the open door, like they can come in and get their work in because they have their plan and everything, or, you know, they're showing up at this time that day or whatever it might be. But, you know, that's kind of, that's not right now for me. That's coming.
Yeah, for sure. And I think we went from a point, and I think maybe other people can relate to this in either baseball, in ideology of strategy, methods, whatever, business. We went from a point where like, that's literally what I did. I started with, you know, the very first person I ever had, like I trained in my parents' basement when I was like 18. And we like hit whiffles, and it was just ridiculous. It was like a ridiculous setting. Then I went from renting space. We grew a clientele. We bought some technology. We wanted our own space. Like that's how we got it. And when we went away from the lesson model, there was like probably a twofold reason for it. There was the reason that like we wanted to get into groups because we wanted less kids more often. We wanted to be able to do more with them. We wanted to see them more often for the same price. I didn't want to tell people, hey, you know, I'm going to see you one-on-one, but I want to see you 4 times a week, and it's got to be longer than 30 minutes because we're going to do the lifting, we're going to do the movement, we're going to do all this stuff, and it's going to cost you, you know, upwards of $1,000 a month, and like your like families just can't do that. So we created a model that was actually less expensive than lessons with what we felt was more value. And so when we did that, we also then went back to like almost like unintentionally destroyed the lesson model for our facility. Even though now when we look back, like there's a point in time, if you can take a kid that you've had in groups and he needs like a 30-minute, like we talked about like earlier. I don't know if you were on the call when I said that, like I talked to that kid for 25 minutes out of the 30, and it was like just basically a one-on-one like psychology session. Like I'm not a trained psychologist, but like that's what he needed. He needed to be listened to, he needed to be heard, and he needed like some kind of confidence, like in context outside of just swinging drills and doing things. I think there's value into that. And so I think there's a lot of value in the one-on-one lessons. I think some of our content was almost better when we did one-on-one lessons because we were trying to get these guys, one, to work on their own. We were trying to create confidence outside of the facility. I was making a lot more like more posts on confidence. Like when I stopped doing that, like there was like high school kids that reached out. They're like, dude, you haven't like posted anything on confidence in like 3 weeks. Like what gives, man? I like that stuff. It's like, really? Like I didn't know anybody actually watched that. I thought it was just eyewash. And so then we went into like the data technology side of posting things, and like kids don't care about that. Like they don't care why it works. They just want to know if it works and what they can do to perform in the field. So I think there's a balance of if you can manage to see less kids more often and it fits your model and your business, but also offer that one-on-one side. That's kind of like would be the ideal. And we've shifted almost away from even having that option to do the one-on-one, only doing groups, or we're like pulling kids aside, or we make ourselves available if they need us. But I think like that blend of doing both is probably like the best route and the most efficient route, and probably the route that has the most value, in my opinion, on that. So as you shift into that, like don't make the mistakes that I did in going almost like too group oriented and then like blowing up your lessons saying like, we can give you more value in groups. Like there's definitely still value in the lessons, especially depending on like what the like family wants to do. Maybe the family only wants to commit so much time, and your little nugget that you like tell them, or your little cue that you told them is going to play all season for them, and you told it to them in their first lesson, and that's what played. So I think if you can just manage having a better balance than we did when we made that transition, that'll probably help you.
Yeah, totally, man. Thanks. That's a great piece of advice. I appreciate it. But I gotta get going, so I'll be on tomorrow.
All right, man. Sounds good. Thanks for listening. Anybody else got anything? As we wrap up, Bryce, thanks for hanging out, man.
Oh. Absolutely. I know. Wait, hold on. I think I saw. Oh, hold on. Oh, Noah Price asked about ladder drills. Is he still on here? Yep. Quick answer, Noah. I think you said you're 11. There's a lot of different ways to, let's say, get faster. On, let's say, any kind of social media, you'll see people use ladders in very distinctive ways that include movement patterns, which are great, but at the same time, you learning how to run and run fast and do it often, it's a lot of the same things that I'm sure everyone's going to be talking about in the next couple of days, is that you're trying to develop a skill. Running it is a skill. So practicing that skill is going to help it over time. So if you can go on YouTube, you can look up wall drills, boom drills, wicket runs, and we'll stick with those 3 right now. I'll assume those will help you a little bit, and they're really easy to understand. And film it. You can email me or DM me or put it on Slack, and I'll analyze it and go over it with you and everyone, and that's absolutely fine.
Bryce, how about just like running up and down a hill like as fast as you can?
Oh, absolutely.
Like I would say, like for me, like that's probably like the simplest answer. If someone were to, for even like my kids, when they ask me that, like we're gonna go find a hill, and for resistance training, we'll go up the hill. If I'm trying to do speed training, I'm trying to take giant strides down the hill without tumbling over. And the cool thing about going down the hill is like your body like goes into panic mode, it's fight or flight, and actually like neuromuscular to like actually kick out faster so you don't fall. It's kind of like the overload underload concept.
Yes. And that's kind of the wicket runs that everyone sees a lot now on Twitter and Instagram. It's for, I'd say for someone his age, it'll kind of give them like a little bit of a visual cue, but also like in return, you can set up sticks and you can do it up a hill too. And it's the same thing. But yeah, using a hill, slight incline, even the decline aspect, like you said, the fight or flight, same thing. So, absolutely. Hills are probably the easiest to do. But in general, just, you got to run. It's like I said, everyone's trying to improve a skill, and running is a skill. Speed training, it's skill oriented. You have to put a lot of time into it, just like you do your hitting and throwing, like everyone else is talking about.
So the way that I view ladders, and I think at your age, I think it could still provide value for you, is like proprioception or body awareness, understanding where your feet are underneath you. Like every tool is only as good as how you use it. And I think if you use a ladder for speed training, you're going to be disappointed. If you use it to understand your body and like what you're doing underneath where your feet are doing underneath your hips while your head's looking up. I think you can get a lot out of it, which is also going to be really important in baseball, depending on what position you play.
Yep. So, I mean, there's 100 different ways to do it, Noah. And I won't take too long. Oh, look at you. But I mean, Ryan kind of said it perfectly. You can use whatever equipment you have, but there has to be I'd say a goal in mind. So for younger kids, using a ladder, like for yourself, Noah, doing certain drills that I'd say balance and awareness wise are going to help you. And then, utilizing a hill or just any open land in general to run is going to be a pretty safe bet right now. Like I said, you can look up on YouTube for pretty simple ladder drills that can, I'd say, help out. Shouldn't be anything drastic, but at your age, I'd say your foundational awareness in the sense of like, you want to build your foundation. Think of a car, kind of like Ryan brought up earlier real quick. I want to have a Hemi 8-cylinder turbocharged. I want everything. But in order to have that, the base of that has to be willing to support that. So we're behind on balance and stabilization and, kinesthetic awareness, then we're not going to have the base that we want in the future. So, do things that are simple and effective, even if it's, single leg hop drills and balancing, be able to stick your landing without moving or wobbling. Start with that. And then obviously you can move on up the chain. The same thing with running, do simple things that are going to be effective. So if you have other questions, please feel free to reach out and I'll help however I can.
Awesome, man. Hey, I really appreciate it. Any other questions or anything anybody else wants to talk about?
Stay by me.
Doesn't look like it.
All right. Well, I'll end the meeting then, guys. I appreciate everybody's time. And we'll see you guys tomorrow.
Absolutely. I appreciate it.
Thanks again, Bryce. Appreciate you.
No problem.
Bye.